And we was getting straight into our conversations this morning. Yes, we are still talking quite a bit about the budget. A little bit later on today at about 1:30, the Parliament is going to reconvene, and we are going to have the kick-off of the budget debate, starting with Opposition Leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar, as we dive a little bit into it. And we're going to hear a bit more about what are the various plans from the various ministries for budget 2024. So, for this morning, we are going to be talking a little bit about national security. And to give us a perspective on some of the plans that were outlined by the minister on Monday, we are being joined by former Commissioner of Police and the political leader of the National Transformation Alliance, Mr. Gary Griffith. Good morning and welcome to you, sir. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Good morning. I think I will spend more time being speaking as the previous Minister of National Security to explain
Yes.
what was lacking in that budget.
Certainly, you're definitely an expert all around where this is concerned. But I want to get first of all into one of the major plans that were announced by the minister is his idea or the idea of the government to combat crime is to triple the police force. Is this going to be effective in your opinion?
But the answer is that there's an established strength to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and we are short 1,400 officers. But however, that is not the problem because the same number of officers we have now, where it is the country is experiencing the highest crime rate in our history, it's the same number of police officers we had 2 years ago when I was Commissioner of Police, and that wasn't a concern. Never before had we seen such high visibility police officers everywhere you turn. There was always these things of a few moments later, a rapid response, and because of that, it shows that it is not because there's a shortage of police officers. It has to do with how you manage the police service, and that is what is required. So yes, it is that there's a requirement for us to increase the establishment, but by and large, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the numbers, it is probably about the highest in the Americas in relation to the population. So and there's been a lot of research done by different organizations have confirmed that. So it is not for the importance is not for us to increase quantity, but to enhance quality and making sure the number of officers can actually operate at optimum level. The difference with this administration is they want to spend more time taking the police officers back in the police stations, and that's what's happening now. Whereas 2 years ago, every corner, everywhere you go, you'll be seeing police officers, you'll be seeing police vehicles. People complained about seeing it, and that's the same numbers that we have now. Now, they love to put police officers back in stations. So you have 12 police officers sitting in a station waiting for one report every day, if so much. As it pertains to the recruit intake, the concept that they had, every single thing, they had 8 policies in this whole budget allocation for national security. Every single one is a regurgitation, a total repeat of what was there when I was Minister of National Security under the People's Partnership Administration or as the Commissioner of Police. This was a copy of what it is we did in 2014, where we tripled the number of recruits by moving the training from the police academy into the Chaguaramas Convention Center. So all they've done is copy exactly what we did 8 years ago, but because of bad mind and pettiness, they refused to continue that process. So for 8 years, they went back to the police academy, and even when I was the Commissioner of Police, I tried to get that done. They refused. So going back now to this situation, the problem exists that if you go back to the Chaguaramas Convention Center, which is what I use as Minister of National Security to do what they intend to do now, which is to triple the intake, it is going to cost the taxpayers over $30 million to refurbish that Chaguaramas Convention Center because of the failure of the government to utilize it since 2014 for the same thing. And whereas the police academy, there are lots of different facilities next to the academy that could be used. So my point being is that it's just a copy, but everything else in that budget presentation from social media, we actually established a social media response team. We had online reporting. We had a police app that was the largest app in the country at the time. We had online reporting. We had SOS. All of these things they scrapped, so that they're speaking now about social media. He then spoke about $80 million for the police vehicles. But the thing about it is that putting $80 million to purchase police vehicles, if you don't have proper preventative maintenance, you're going to end up to having the same situation we have now, where police stations have no vehicles, the community comfort patrol, they shut down, the emergency response patrol, they shut down. So you're not going to have the vehicles if it is that you don't have that proper system for preventative maintenance. He spoke about $15 million for the refereeing unit. I established that 2 years when I was commissioner of police. It is the first time the police had a marine unit in over 2 decades. And they decided to virtually shut it down for 2 years. And now they're trying to bring it back by pumping $15 million into it. He spoke about polygraph testing and vetting. That is what was done for the first time in years in the police service when I made it mandatory for polygraph testing and drug testing, especially for elite units such as the Special Operation Response Team and even units that will be on the coastline to ensure that police officers will not be on the take as it pertains to the illegal entry of drugs and human trafficking. He then spoke about support with the U.S. authorities. We provided a coordination between us and the NYPD for the first time that assisted us to establish the gender-based violence unit, media monitoring unit, getting this training, customer service training. So all that he spoke about with the US authorities, that was already there and they ignored it for 2 years. He then spoke about the scanners. We acquired 2 scanners, mobile scanners to assist the ports, and they decided to scrap it and not use those scanners for 2 years. He then finally spoke about the dormant vessels, which for 8 years they refused to use. Those
And
dormant
actually,
vessels
I
are
want to stick a pin there on those vessels and so on, because in Tobago we do have a major concern when it comes to the Coast Guard unit, because we actually don't have a vessel anymore here in Tobago. We have to wait until a vessel comes from Trinidad, and it only comes from Trinidad depending on the instruction from the higher ups. But when it comes, like for instance, we had a situation the other day, we had a drowning out in the Buku Reef Marine Park, and we had to use one of our scuba diving vessels from one of our local people. The Coast Guard had to use that to go and recover the body. So what's really
well,
going on where the Coast Guard is concerned, especially for ensuring Tobago is protected?
well, that you stole my thunder there. I was saving the best for last, or the worst, I should say. I challenge anyone, name one thing that this government has done to assist in security for Tobago in this budget allocation. Name one thing. There was nothing. They totally ignored Tobago by and large. I mean, looking at all the things that they spoke about, there was nothing in particular emphasis to assist in securing the citizens in Tobago. So whereas I was Minister of National Security, I understood that a safer Tobago ensures a safer Trinidad, because anytime Tobago crime increases, I'll have to allocate more resources into Tobago that can lift the crime rate in Trinidad, which is why I established the Commissioner's Command, the Operation Command Center, an arm of the National Operations Center, reestablished that E99 unit to be N999 unit to be more effective, putting in looking to get helicopters across there, the coastal vessels from the Coast Guard. Nothing that they have said to put emphasis on trying to assist in the development and the protection of Tobago by putting emphasis on the ports, making sure it is so comical. Like I continue to state, you're going into Tobago, you have to come out and go through a walkthrough scanner. But every vehicle that enters the to go into Tobago, it is not checked. So what are you scanning the individual for? It is comical. We're supposed to put emphasis on those ports with getting canine, making sure that we can lock down to ensure that the illegal weapons and the illegal drugs that we have amassed in Trinidad cannot get across to Tobago. But there was nothing established. And again, going right back to Coast Guard, it is obvious that there must be emphasis to secure Tobago. When I was Commissioner of Police and I established the refereeing unit, I had it in my budget for 2021 to 2022 to ensure that we have an arm of the Marine branch in Tobago from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. This was totally shut down after I left. It shows a total slap in the face and a disrespect to Tobagonians, disregard to the importance of security for Tobago. And again, as I said, I acquired 6 dormant vessels, 6, and 2 of those were supposed to go to Tobago 8 years ago. Those 6 vessels, so all persons from Tobago, anytime you have chance, come to Trinidad, go down the islands, you will see these 6 vessels, and these 6 vessels, along with 2 utility vessels, could have done the exact thing that the OPBs that they were planning to acquire could have done, but at a cost of $1.2 billion less, 1,200 million less than the OPBs. But we got these 6 dormant vessels, left them here in Stobles Bay, not used. 1 or 2 should have gone across. That was the plan when I was a minister, to send it across to Tobago. In fact, I think 1 or 2 of the names were indicative of Tobago, because that is what those vessels were there for. They refused to do it, and the vessels remained there in Stobles Bay for 8 years. And now after 8 years, you're swallowing your pride to admit that, listen, yes, we need to bring back these vessels. I think this budget allocation as it pertains to Tobago has been a total slap in the face and a disrespect to every citizen in Tobago.
I mean, we're supposed to be having some talks coming up pretty soon between the Prime Minister and the opposition. Now, we haven't heard any confirmation that you would be included in those talks. Are you going to be included in those talks? And do you think that those talks would be any fruit?
Well, again, just like what he put out, there were about 120 policies I established as a security minister and a commissioner of police. It had measured success. As the Minister of National Security during that period, it was the highest reduction in serious crime in 30 years. As the Commissioner of Police, it was the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. But you shut down and dismantle and move 120 plus policies. You have now tried to reignite 8. There's a ninth as it pertains to community policing. And if you recall, we had the Community Comfort Patrol in 2015. We had, as a Commissioner of Police, I brought the Commissioner's Cup, where Tobago had participation and getting communities to work together. And then Operation Crossroads by getting 1,000 police officers trained to be a big brother to 1,000 at-risk youths. So 9 different policies out of 120, they decided to bring back what it is that was established before and worked. The problem is there's a difference with putting this out and understanding how to implement it. If they don't understand how to implement it, it is not going to work. And therein lies the problem, because it is not about pumping funds. When I was commissioner, they reduced the budget allocation for the police service by $300 million. Yet it was the highest visibility. Your police officers were being seen everywhere. You were getting the fastest response. And now, whereas with me, you reduced it by $300 million during a period where we needed police officers because of the COVID pandemic. Now you have increased it by $95 million in the hope that by pumping money, you're going to get results. It has to do more about leadership and management, making people accountable, measuring their performance, than just pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into a ministry.
Now, as you mentioned, management, I want to touch on another situation that's happening in Tobago, where the THA is actually being called upon to take care of certain costs for not just the police, but the Coast Guard, the Army, and so on, whether it is to help them provide vehicles, whether it is to provide accommodation for the officers and so on, and in the various forces. And we also have a situation where our prisons are no longer here in Tobago. We can't be in Tobago because of the state of the facilities, which I know that you, Mr. Griffith, are aware of, because that's something that you were treating with since your time as the Minister of National Security as well as Commissioner of Police. I mean, and so I just want to know if I could get a comment on you on these things that
Yeah,
are
sure.
happening for us here in
And
Tobago.
that is why when I was the National Security Advisor in 2010, I drafted that Ministry of Justice for the Kamala Prasad administration, understanding the importance for the Ministry of Justice. We needed to have a ministry just to revamp our whole justice system. Our recidivism rate is one of the highest in the world because of poor rehabilitation. We don't have proper systems. We have certain persons will be incarcerated and be in remand for 10 years for a case, for a matter where the maximum sentence could have been 6 years. So that is why we formed the Ministry of Justice. Because of pettiness and small-mindedness, they decided to scrap the Ministry of Justice in 2015. And that is where all of these problems we have in the prison is escalating, even with police officers. I had to reduce 87% reduction in police absenteeism from court because police officers were just not attending court when persons were charged. And then sometimes when it is they were being paid off or the police didn't see it being important, I had to show the importance and discipline police officers. By doing that, it ensured that criminals realized, okay, they felt that the product of opportunity was there, they are arrested, they are charged, the officers wouldn't show up at court. All of this was the importance of a proper Ministry of Justice to change and revamp our criminal justice system. It has been totally ignored as it pertains to the accommodation for police officers and members of the defense force in Tobago. Again, it shows total incompetence on the part of this administration, where it is that they've pumped tens upon tens of millions of dollars for stations. Some of the new stations built. You know, the one good thing with governmental, they try to, the bigger they purchase and build items, the more you could get kickbacks for your friends. So you build a police station that can hold 250 officers, which is probably more than the number of officers in Tobago. There was no need to have to build something of that magnitude when there's so much that is needed to help the police service and the defense force in Tobago. And that is what is required by trying to pass the buck and throw it on the THA, whereas you are central government, that is your responsibility to look after the logistic, the finance, the administration for the members of the protective services. Again, it shows total disregard, if not virtual sabotage for the security of Tobago.
Okay. Well, Mr. Griffith, we are unfortunately out of time for this conversation, but I really appreciate your comments on the situation, and certainly somebody who also understands what's happening in Tobago, having worked in various capacities in relation. So thank you so much for being on with us this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, great.